The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. This book consists of 122 pages and is arranged in 12 chapters. 1. From my grandfather Verus, I learned good morals and the government of my temper. From the reputation and remembrance of my father, modesty and a manly character. From my mother, piety and generosity and abstinence, not only from evil deeds, but even from evil thoughts, and further, simplicity in my way of living, far removed from the habits of the rich. From my great-grandfather, not to go to the public schools, but to have good teachers at home, and to know that on such things a man should spend liberally. From my tutor, to be neither of the green nor of the blue party at the games and the circus, nor a partisan either of the Parmularius or the Scutarius at the gladiators' fights. From him, too, I learned endurance of hardship, and to want little, and to work with my own hands, and not to meddle with other people's affairs, and not to be ready to listen to slander. From Diognetus, not to busy myself about trifling things, and not to give credit to what miracle workers and jugglers say about incantations and the driving away of demons and such things, and not to breed quails, or to give myself up passionately to such things, and to tolerate freedom of speech, and to become intimate with philosophy, and to be a hearer, first of Bacchius, then of Tandasis and Marcianus, and to write dialogues in my youth, and to like a plank bed and skin, and whatever else of the kind belongs to the Grecian discipline. From Rusticus I got the idea that my character needed improvement and discipline, and from him I learned not to be led astray to sophistic vanity, or to write on speculative matters, or to deliver little moral harangues, or to show myself off as a man who practices much discipline, or does benevolent acts in order to make a display, and to refrain from rhetoric and poetry and fine writing, and not to walk about in the house in my outdoor robe, or to do other things of the kind, and to write my letters with simplicity, like the letter which he wrote from Sinuessa to my mother, and with regard to persons who have offended me by words, or done me wrong, to be easily pacified and reconciled, as soon as they have shown a desire to be reconciled, and to read carefully, and not to be satisfied with the superficial understanding of a book, nor hastily to give my assent to those who talk overmuch. And I am indebted to him for my acquaintance with the discourses of Epictetus, which he gave me out of his own collection. From Apollonius I learned freedom of will and undeviating steadiness of purpose, and to look at nothing else, not even for a moment, but reason, and to be always the same, even in sharp pains, in the loss of a child, and in long illness, and to see clearly from his living example that the same man can be both most resolute and lenient, and not peevish in giving his instruction. I had before my eyes a man who clearly considered his experience and his skill in expounding philosophical principles as the smallest of his merits, and from him I learned how to receive from friends what are considered favors, without being either humbled by them or letting them pass without notice. From Sextus, good humor, and the example of a family governed in a fatherly manner, and the idea of living in accord with nature, and gravity without affectation, and to look carefully after the interests of friends, and to tolerate ignorant persons, and those friends who form opinions without consideration. He had the power of readily adapting himself to all, so that conversation with him was more delightful than any flattery. At the same time, he was most highly venerated by those who associated with him, and he had the faculty both of discovering and stating, in an intelligent and methodical way, the principles necessary for living. And he never showed anger or any other passion, but was entirely free from passion, and also most affectionate, and he could express approbation without noisy display, and he possessed great knowledge without ostentation. From Alexander the grammarian, to refrain from fault-finding, and not in a reproachful way to chide those who uttered any barbarous or incorrect or strange-sounding expression, but tactfully to introduce the very expression which they ought to have used in the course of an answer or assent or inquiry about the thing, not about the word, or by some other suitable suggestion. From Fronto, I learned to observe what envy and duplicity and hypocrisy are in a tyrant, and that generally those among us who are called patricians are rather deficient in paternal affection. From Alexander the Platonist, not frequently nor without necessity, to say to anyone, or to write in a letter, I have no time, nor continually to excuse the neglect of duties required by our relation to those we live with, by alleging urgent business. From Catullus, not to be deaf when a friend finds fault, even if he should find fault without reason, but to try to restore him to his usual humor, and always to speak well of my teachers, as Domitius and Athenodotus are said to have done, and to love my children truly. From my brother Severus, to love my kin, and to love truth, and to love justice, and through him I learned to know Thracia, Helvidius, Cato, Dion, Brutus, and from him I received the idea of a state in which there is the same law for all, a state administered with regard to equal rights and equal freedom of speech, and the idea of a kingly government which respects most of all the freedom of the governed. I learned from him also consistency and undeviating steadiness in my regard for philosophy, and a disposition to do good, and to give to others readily, and to cherish good hopes, and to believe that I am loved by my friends. And in him I observed no concealment of his opinion of those whom he condemned, and that his friends had no need to conjecture what he wished or did not wish, but it was quite plain. From Maximus I learned self-government, and not to be led aside by anything, and a cheerfulness in all circumstances as well as in illness, and a just admixture in the moral character of sweetness and dignity, and to do what was set before me without complaining. I observed that everybody believed that he thought as he spoke, and that in all that he did he never had any bad intention, and he never showed amazement and surprise, and was never in a hurry, and never put off doing a thing, nor was he perplexed nor dejected, nor did he ever laugh to disguise his vexation, nor, on the other hand, was he ever passionate or suspicious. He was accustomed to do acts of kindness, and was ready to forgive, and was free from all falsehood, and he presented the appearance of a man who could not be diverted from right, rather than of a man who had been improved. I observed, too, that no man could ever think that he was despised by Maximus, or ever venture to think himself a better man. He had also the art of being humorous in an agreeable way. In my father I observed mildness of temper, and unchangeable resolution in the things which he had determined on after due deliberation, and no vainglory in those things which men call honors, and a love of labor and perseverance, and a readiness to listen to whoever had anything to propose for the common weal, and undeviating firmness in giving to every man his deserts. and a knowledge derived from experience of the right times for vigorous action and for relaxation. And I observed that he had overcome any passion for boys, and he considered himself no more than any other citizen, and he released his friends from all obligation to dine with him, or compulsion to attend him when he went abroad, and those who had failed to accompany him by reason of any urgent circumstance always found him the same. I observed, too, his habit of careful inquiry into all matters of deliberation, and his persistency, and that he never stopped an investigation as though satisfied with first appearances, and that his disposition was to keep his friends, and not to be soon tired of them, nor yet to be extravagant in his affection, and to be satisfied on all occasions, and cheerful, and to foresee things a long way off, and to provide for the smallest details without display, and to check immediately popular applause and all flattery, and to be ever watchful over the things which were necessary for the administration of the empire, and to be a good manager of the expenditure, and patiently to endure the blame which he got for such conduct. And he was neither superstitious with respect to the gods, nor did he court men by gifts or by trying to please them, or by flattering the populace, but he showed sobriety in all things, and firmness, and never any mean thoughts or action, or love of novelty. And the things which conduce in any way to the comfort of life, and of which fortune gives an abundant supply, he used without arrogance and without excusing himself, so that when he had them, he enjoyed them without affectation, and when he had them not, he did not want them. No one could ever say of him that he was either a sophist, or a flippant slave, or pedant, and everyone acknowledged him to be a man ripe, perfect, above flattery, able to manage his own and other men's affairs. Besides this, he honored those who were true philosophers, and he did not reproach those who pretended to be philosophers, nor yet was he easily led by them. He was also easy in conversation, and made himself agreeable without any offensive affectation. He took a reasonable care of his body's health, not as one who was greatly attached to life, nor out of regard to personal appearance, nor yet in a careless way, but so that, through his own attention, he very seldom stood in need of the physician's art, or of medicine, or external applications. He was ready to make way, without envy, to those who possessed any particular faculty, such as that of eloquence, or knowledge of the law, or morals, or anything else, and he gave them his help, that each might enjoy reputation according to his deserts, and he always conformed to the institutions of his country, without making any show of doing so. Further, he was not fond of change, nor unsteady, but loved to stay in the same places, and to employ himself about the same things. And after his paroxysms of headache, he came back immediately fresh and vigorous to his usual occupations. His secrets were not many, but very few and rare, and only about public matters. And he showed prudence and economy in putting on public spectacles, and constructing public buildings, in donations to the people and such things, for he was one who looked to what ought to be done, not to the reputation which a man gets by his acts. He did not bathe at unreasonable hours, he was not fond of building houses, nor curious about what he ate. He did not care about the texture and color of his clothes, or about the beauty of his slaves. His clothing came from Lorium, where his country house was, and was usually of Lanuvian wool. We know how he behaved to the toll-collector at Tusculum, who asked his pardon, and such was his behavior always. There was in him nothing harsh, or implacable, or violent, or, as one may say, anything carried to the sweating point. But he examined things one by one as if he had plenty of time, and without confusion, in an orderly way, vigorously and consistently. And that might be applied to him, which is recorded of Socrates, that he was able either to leave or to take those things which many are too weak to abstain from, and cannot enjoy in moderation. But to be strong enough either to do the first or to be sober in the second is the mark of a man who has a perfect and invincible soul, such as he showed in the illness of Maximus. To the gods I am indebted for having good grandfathers, good parents, a good sister, good teachers, good associates, good kinsmen and friends, nearly everything good. Further, I owe it to the gods that I was not pushed into any offense against any of them, though I had a disposition which, if opportunity had offered, might have led me into something of this kind. But through their favor, there never was such a concurrence of circumstances as put me to the trial. Further, I am thankful to the gods that I was not longer brought up with my grandfather's mistress, and that I preserved the flower of my youth, and that I did not make proof of my virility before the proper season, but even deferred the time, that I was subjected to a ruler and a father, who was able to take away all pride from me, and to bring me the knowledge that it is possible for a man to live in a palace without wanting either guards, or embroidered robes, or torches and statues, and such like show, but that it is in such a man's power to bring himself very near the fashion of a private person, without becoming thereby either meaner in thought or less forceful in action, when things must be done for the public interest in a manner that befits a ruler. I thank the gods for giving me a brother who was able by his moral character to rouse me to vigilance over myself, and who at the same time pleased me by his respect and affection, that my children have not been stupid or deformed in body, that I was not more proficient in rhetoric, poetry, and the other studies in which I should perhaps have been completely engaged, if I had seen that I was making progress in them, that I promptly placed those who brought me up in the stations of honor they seemed to desire, without putting them off with promises of doing it some time after, because they were then still young, that I received clear and frequent impressions of what is meant about living in accordance with nature, so that, so far as depended on the gods, and their gifts, and help, and inspiration, nothing hindered me from living according to nature, though I still fall short of it through my own fault, and through not observing the admonitions of the gods, and, I may almost say, their dictates, that my body has held out so long in such a kind of life, that I never touched either Benedicta or Theodotus, and that, after having fallen into some fits of love, I was cured, and though I was often out of humor with Rusticus, I never did anything of which I had occasion to repent, that, though it was my mother's fate to die young, she spent the last years of her life with me, that, whenever I wished to help any man in his need, or on any other occasion, I was never told that I had not the means of doing it, and that to myself the necessity never arrived of receiving anything from another, that I have such a wife, so obedient and so affectionate, and so simple, that I had abundance of good masters for my children, and that remedies have been shown to me by dreams, among other things, against blood-spitting and dizziness, and that when I had an inclination to philosophy, I did not fall into the hands of any sophist, and that I did not waste my time on the ordinary philosophers, or in solving syllogisms, or investigating appearances in the heavens, for all these things require the help of the gods and fortune. Among the Quadi, by the Granua. 2. Begin the morning by saying to yourself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial. All these things happen to them by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil. But I, who have seen the nature of the good, that it is beautiful, and of the bad, that is ugly, and the nature of man who does wrong, that it is akin to mine, not only of the same blood or seed, but that it participates in the same intelligence and the same portion of divinity. I can neither be harmed by any of them, for no one can fix on me what is ugly, nor can I be angry with my brother, nor hate him. For we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. To act against one another, then, is contrary to nature, and it is acting against one another to be vexed, and to turn away. Whatever this is that I am, it is a little flesh, breath, and the ruling part. Throw away your books. No longer distract yourself, it is not allowed. But as if you were now dying, despise the flesh. It is blood and bones and a network, a tissue of nerves, veins, and arteries. See the breath also, what kind of a thing it is, air, and not always the same, but every moment sent out and again sucked in. The third is the ruling part. Consider thus. You are an old man. No longer let this part be a slave. No longer be pulled by the strings like a puppet by self-seeking impulse. No longer be either dissatisfied with your present lot, or shrink from the future. All that is from the gods is full of providence. The workings of chance are not separated from nature, or without an interweaving and dependence on the dispositions of providence. From providence all things flow, and side by side with it is necessity, and that which works to the advantage of the whole universe, of which you are a part. But that is good for every part of nature, which the nature of the whole brings to pass, and which serves to maintain this nature. Now the universe is preserved, both by the changes of the elements, and by the changes of the things compounded. Let these principles be enough for you. Let them always be fixed opinions. But cast away the thirst after books, that you may not die murmuring, but cheerfully, and thankful from your heart to the gods. Remember how long you have been putting off these things, and how often you have received an opportunity from the gods, and yet have not used it. You must now at last perceive of what kind of a universe you are a part, and the true nature of the Lord of the universe, of which your being is a part, and how a limit of time is fixed for you, which, if you do not use for clearing away the clouds from your mind, it will go, and you will go, and it will never return. Every moment think steadily, as a Roman and as a man, to do what you have in hand with perfect and simple dignity, and kindliness, and freedom, and justice, and to give yourself relief from all other thoughts. And you will give yourself relief if you do every act of your life as if it were the last, renouncing all carelessness and passionate resistance to the commands of reason, and all hypocrisy and self-love, and discontent with the portion which has been given to you. You see how few the things are which a man needs to lay hold of in order to live a life which flows in quiet, and is like the life of the gods. For the gods, on their part, will require nothing more from him who observes these things. Is violence done you? Do no violence to yourself, my soul. Soon the opportunity of honoring yourself will be at an end. Every man's life is enough, but yours is nearly finished, though your soul honors not yourself, but places your felicity in the souls of others. Do things external which happen to you distract you? Give yourself time to learn something new and good, and cease to be whirled around. But then you must also avoid going astray the other way. For those, too, are triflers, who have worn themselves out by activity, and yet have no goal to which they direct their movements or their thoughts. Through not observing the thoughts of another, a man is seldom unhappy. But he who does not observe the movements of his own mind must of necessity be unhappy. This you must always bear in mind. What is the nature of the whole, and what is my nature, and how this is related to that, and what kind of part it is, of what kind of whole? And there is no one who can hinder you from always doing and saying the things which are in accord with the nature of which you are a part. Theophrastus, in his comparison of wrong acts, such a comparison as one might make to fit the common notions of mankind, says, like a true philosopher, that offenses committed through desire are more blameworthy than those committed through anger. For a man excited by anger seems to abandon his reason with pain and unconscious shrinking, but he who sins through desire, overpowered by pleasure, seems more intemperate and more unmanly in his offenses. Rightly then, and like a philosopher, he said that a sin committed with pleasure is more blameworthy than one committed with pain. The first is more like a person who has been wronged, and through pain compelled to be angry. But the second is moved by his own impulse to do wrong, and carried on to sin by desire. Since it is possible that you may be quitting life this very moment, govern every act and thought accordingly. But to go away from mankind, if there are gods, is no thing to be afraid of, for the gods will do you no evil, and if they do not exist, or if they have no concern for human affairs, why should I live in a universe devoid of gods or devoid of providence? But in truth they do exist, and they do care for human things, and they have put it entirely in man's power not to fall into real evils. As to other troubles, if they were really evil, they would have provided for them also, and given man the power not to fall into them. Now, that which does not make a man worse, how can it make his life worse? But neither because it was ignorant, nor because with the knowledge it had not the power to guard against or correct these things, could the nature of that universe have overlooked them, nor could it have made so great a mistake, either through want of power or want of skill, that the real good and evil should happen indiscriminately to good men and bad, but death certainly, and life, honor and dishonor, pain and pleasure, all these things do happen alike to good men and bad, for they are things which make us neither better nor worse. Therefore they are really neither good nor evil. How quickly all things disappear, bodies into the universe, memories of them in time. What is the nature of sense objects, and particularly of those which attract with the bait of pleasure, or terrified by pain, or are known everywhere for their vapory fame. How worthless and contemptible and sordid and perishable and dead they are! All this it is the part of the intellect to observe. To observe, too, what people they are, whose opinions and voices create a reputation, what death is, and how, if a man looks at it in itself, and by the abstract power of reflection analyzes the features of it which strike the imagination, he will discover it is nothing else than an operation of nature, and he who fears the course of nature is a child. Death, however, is not only a work of nature, but it is also a thing that fulfills the purposes of nature. Observe, too, how man comes near to the deity, and by what part of him, and when this part of him is so disposed. Nothing is more wretched than the man who travels about everywhere, and pries into things beneath the earth, as the poet says, and strives to conjecture the thoughts of his neighbors, without perceiving that it is sufficient to attend to the divinity within him, and to reverence it sincerely. And to revere the divinity means keeping it pure from passion and frivolity, and content with gods and men. For the government of the gods merits veneration for its excellence, and the deeds of men should be dear to us by reason of our kinship with them. Sometimes they even move our pity by reason of their ignorance of good and evil. This defect is as great as the blindness, which cannot tell white from black. Though you were to live 3,000 years, or 3,000,000, still remember that no man loses any other life than this which he now lives, or lives any other than this which he now loses. The longest and the shortest thus come to the same, for the present is the same to everyone, though the past is not the same, and what is lost appears to be a mere moment. For a man cannot lose either his past or his future. For what a man has not, how can anyone take from him? These two things, then, you must bear in mind. The first, that all things from eternity repeat the same forms and come round in a circle, and that it makes no difference whether a man gazes at the same things for 100 years, or 200, or an infinite time. And the second, that the longest liver, and he who dies soonest, lose just the same. For the present is the only thing a man can lose, if it is true that it is the only thing he has, and that a man cannot lose a thing which he has not. Remember that all is but opinion. For what the cynic Monimus said is obvious, and obvious, too, is the use of what he said, if a man accepts what may be got out of it only as far as it is true. The soul of man does violence to itself, first of all, when it becomes an abscess and, as it were, a tumor on the universe as far as it can. For to be vexed at anything that happens is a separation of ourselves from nature, in some part of which the natures of all other things are contained. Secondly, the soul does violence to itself when it turns away from any man, or moves against him with the intention of harming him, as do the souls of the angry. In the third place, the soul does violence to itself when it succumbs to pleasure or pain. Fourthly, when it plays a part and acts or speaks insincerely or untruly. Fifthly, when it performs any act or any movement aimlessly, and does anything thoughtlessly and without considering what it is, whereas even the smallest things ought to be designed for an end. And the end of rational beings is to follow the reason and the law of the most ancient city and commonwealth. The time of human life is but a point, and the substance is a flux, and its perceptions dull, and the composition of the body corruptible, and the soul a whirl, and fortune inscrutable, and fame a senseless thing. In a word, everything which belongs to the body is a flowing stream, and what belongs to the soul a dream and a vapor. And life is a warfare, and a stranger's sojourn, and future fame is oblivion. What then is there which can guide a man? One thing and only one, philosophy. Now this consists in keeping the divinity within us, free from violence and unharmed, superior to pain and pleasure, doing nothing without a purpose, nor yet falsely and with hypocrisy, not feeling the need of another man's doing or not doing something, and furthermore, accepting all that happens and all that is allotted us as coming from the source, wherever it is, whence it itself came, and finally, waiting for death with a cheerful mind, since it is nothing but a dissolving of the elements of which each living being is composed. If the elements themselves are not harmed by each continually changing into another, why should a man feel any dread of the change and dissolution of all his elements? For it is as nature wills it, and nothing is evil which nature wills. At Corontum. 3. We ought to remember not only that our life is daily wasting away, and a smaller part of it is left, but also that if a man should live longer, it is quite uncertain whether his mind will stay strong enough to understand things and retain the power of contemplation, to strive after knowledge of the divine and the human. For if he begins to sink into dotage, he still may perspire and take food and keep his imagination and appetite and other powers of the kind, but the power of making himself useful and filling up the measure of his duty and clearly distinguishing appearances, knowing whether he should retire from life, and whatever else of the kind requires a disciplined reason, all this is already dead in him. We must make haste, then, not only because we are daily nearer to death, but also because our perception of things and understanding of them cease first. We ought to observe also that even the small characteristics of things produced according to nature have something in them pleasing and attractive. For instance, when a loaf of bread is baked, there are cracks in the surface, and these breaks, which are contrary to the purpose of the baker, are beautiful in their way, and stimulate the appetite. Again, figs, when they are quite ripe, gape open, and ripe olives, when they are near to rotting, are particularly good to look at, and ears of corn bending down, and a lion's eyebrows, and the foam which flows from the mouth of a wild boar, and many other things, though they are far from beautiful, if one examines them separately, still, because they are characteristics of things formed by nature, help to adorn them, and please the eye. Thus, if a man has a feeling for, and deep insight into, the things produced in the universe, there is hardly one of their characteristics that will not seem to him of a sort to give him pleasure. So he will look on the gaping jaws of living wild beasts with as much pleasure as on those which painters and sculptors depict in imitation. And in an old woman and an old man he will perceive a certain ripeness and comeliness, and will look on the attractive loveliness of young persons with chaste eyes. Many such beauties will show themselves, not pleasing to every man, but to him who has become truly at home with nature and her works. Hippocrates, who cured many diseases, himself fell sick and died. The Chaldeans foretold the deaths of people, and then fate caught them too. Alexander, Pompey, and Julius Caesar who had destroyed so many whole cities, and in battle cut to pieces so many thousands of horsemen and foot soldiers, themselves too at last departed this life. Heraclitus, who speculated so much on the conflagration of the universe, was swollen with dropsy and died in a plaster of dung. Vermin destroyed Democritus, and another kind of vermin killed Socrates. What does all this mean? You have taken ship, you have made the voyage, you have come to port. Disembark. If you come to another life, there are gods enough even there. But if to a state without sensation, you will no more be gripped by pains and pleasures, or be slave to the vessel, which is as much inferior as that which serves it is superior. For the latter is all intelligence and deity, the former earth and corruption. Waste not the remainder of your life in thoughts about others, except when you are concerned with some unselfish purpose. For you are losing an opportunity to do something else, when you have such thoughts as, what is such a person doing, and why, and what is he saying, and what is he thinking, and what is he contriving, and whatever else of the kind makes us forget to observe our own ruling principle. We ought to check in the course of our thoughts everything that is without a purpose and useless, but most of all meddling and maliciousness. A man should train himself to think only of those things about which, if you were suddenly asked, "What have you now in your thoughts?" with perfect openness you might immediately answer, "This or that," so that, from your words, it should be plain that everything in you is sincere and kindly, and befitting a social animal, and one that cares not for thoughts of pleasure or sensual enjoyments, or any rivalry, or envy, or suspicion, or anything else for which you would blush if you were to say it was in your mind. For such a man, who delays not to enter among the best, is like a priest and minister of the gods, and uses the divinity which is within him, which keeps him uncontaminated by pleasure, unharmed by pain, untouched by insult, feeling no wrong, a fighter in the noblest fight, one who cannot be overpowered by passion, steeped in justice, accepting with all his soul everything that happens, and is assigned to him as his portion. Not often, nor without some great necessity, and for the general interest, does he conjecture what another says, or does, or thinks, for it is only what belongs to himself that he is concerned about. He thinks constantly of what is assigned to him out of the sum total of things, and makes his own acts fair, and is persuaded that his own lot is good. For the lot assigned to each man moves along with him, and carries him along with it. He remembers also that every rational being is his kinsman, and that to care for all men is natural to man, and that a man should not care for the opinion of everybody, but of those only who live according to nature. As for those who live not so, he bears always in mind what kind of men they are both at home and abroad, both by night and by day, and what they are, and with what companions they live their evil life. Accordingly, he values not at all the praise which comes from such men, since they are not satisfied even with themselves. Labor not unwillingly, nor without regard to the common interest, nor without due consideration, nor with distraction, nor express your thoughts with studied eloquence. Be not either a man of many words, or busy about too many things. Make the divinity within you guardian of a living being, manly, of ripe age, a statesman, a Roman, and an emperor, who keeps his post like a man waiting for the signal to summon him from life, ready to go, needing neither the oath nor any man's testimony. Be cheerful also, and depend not on external help, or on the tranquillity which others give. A man must stand erect, not be held erect by others. If you find in human life anything better than justice, truth, temperance, fortitude, in a word, anything better than your own mind's self-satisfaction in the things it enables you to do according to right reason, and in the fate that is assigned you without your own choice, if, I say, you see anything better than this, turn to it with all your soul, and enjoy that which you have found to be best. But if nothing appears to you better than the divinity planted in you, which has subjected all your appetites and carefully examines all impressions, and, as Socrates said, has detached itself from the persuasions of sense, and has submitted itself to the gods, and cares for mankind, if all things else are trifles compared with this, give way to nothing else. For if you once diverge and incline to that, you will no longer, without distraction, be able to give preference to the good thing, which is your own proper possession. For it is not right that anything of another kind, such as popular praise, or power, or enjoyment of pleasure, should compete for a place with that which is rationally and socially good. Such things, even though they may seem for a moment to be harmonious, all at once get the mastery and carry us away. But do you, I say, simply and freely choose the better part and hold to it? But that which is useful is the better. Well then, if it is useful to you as a rational being, keep to it. But if it is only useful to you as an animal, say so. Maintain your judgment without arrogance. Only take care that you make the inquiry by a sure method. Think nothing profitable to you which compels you to break a promise, to lose your self-respect, to hate any man, to suspect, to curse, to act a hypocrite, to desire anything that needs walls and curtains about it. For he who values his own intelligence and the divinity within him, and the worship of its excellence before all else, plays no tragic part, does not groan, does not need either solitude or much company. And what is more than all, he lives without either pursuing or flying from life. But whether for a longer or a shorter time his soul shall stay enclosed in his body, he cares not at all. Even if he must depart immediately, he will go as readily as if he were doing anything else which can be done decently and with order. All through life he takes care of this only, that his thoughts turn not away from what should concern an intelligent being and a member of a civil community. In the mind of one disciplined and purified, you will find no corrupt matter, or impurity, or any sore skinned over. Nor, when fate overtakes him, is his life incomplete, as one may say of an actor who leaves the stage before quite finishing the play. Besides, there is in him nothing servile, or affected, or too closely bound, or yet detached, nothing worthy of blame, nothing that seeks a hiding-place. Honor the faculty which produces opinion. On this faculty it entirely depends whether there exists in your ruling part any opinion inconsistent with nature and the constitution of a rational being. And this faculty urges freedom from hasty judgment, friendship towards men, and obedience to the gods. Cast away, then, all other things. Hold only to these few truths. Bear in mind also that every man lives only in the present, which is an indivisible point, and that all the rest of his life is either past or uncertain. Short, then, is the time which any man lives, and short, too, the longest posthumous fame. And even this is handed on by a succession of poor human beings, who will very soon die, and who know not even themselves, much less one who died long ago. To the aids already mentioned add this one also. Make for yourself a definition or description of every object presented to you, so as to see distinctly what it is in its own naked substance, complete and entire, and tell yourself its proper name, and the names of the things of which it is compounded, and into which it will be dissolved. For nothing so elevates the mind as to be able to examine methodically and truly every object which comes before you in life, and always to look at things so as to see at once what kind of universe this is, and what kind of service each performs in it, and what value each has in relation to the whole, and what it has for man, who is a citizen of that loftiest city, to which all other cities are as families. What is this thing, and of what is it composed, and how long will it naturally last, this thing which now makes an impression on me? What virtue does it demand of me? Is it gentleness, courage, truth, fidelity, simplicity, contentment, and the rest? Thus, on every occasion, a man should say, "This comes from God," or "This is from the decree and spinning of the thread of destiny," or some such coincidence in chance, or "This is from one of the same stock as myself, a kinsman and partner, but who knows not his true relation to nature. I do know, and for this reason I act towards him in accordance with the natural law of fellowship, benevolently and justly. At the same time, in things indifferent, I attempt to judge the value of each." If you work at that which is before you, following right reason seriously, vigorously, calmly, without allowing anything else to distract you, but keeping your divine part pure, as if you were bound to give it back immediately, if you hold to this, expecting nothing, but satisfied to live now according to nature, speaking heroic truth in every word which you utter, you will live happy, and there is no man able to prevent this. As surgeons always have their instruments and knives ready for cases which suddenly need their skill, so do you have principles ready for the understanding of things divine and human, and for every act, even the smallest, remembering the bond which unites the divine and human to one another. For neither will you do any human thing well without at the same time having regard to things divine, nor vice versa. No longer wander at random. You shall not live to read your own memoirs, or the acts of the ancient Romans and Greeks, or the selections from books which you were reserving for your old age. Hasten then to the goal which you have before you. Throw away vain hopes, and come to your own aid, while yet you may, if you care at all for yourself. Men know not how many things are signified by the words stealing, sowing, buying, keeping the peace, seeing what ought to be done, for this cannot be done by the eyes, but by another kind of vision. Body, soul, mind. To the body belong sensations, to the soul impulses, to the mind principles. To receive the impressions of forms by means of sense belongs to all animals. To be pulled by the strings of desire belongs both to wild beasts and to womanish men, to a Phalaris and a Nero. To have a mind that selects what it thinks suitable belongs also to men who do not believe in the gods, who betray their country, and do impure deeds when they have shut their doors. If, then, all these qualities are common to the creatures I have mentioned, there is still what is peculiar to the good man, to be pleased and content with what happens, and with the thread which is spun for him, and not to defile the divinity which is planted in his breast, or disturb it by a crowd of impressions, but to preserve it tranquil, following it obediently as a god, neither saying anything contrary to truth, nor doing anything contrary to justice. And if the world refuses to believe in his simplicity, modesty, and contentment, He is neither angry with anyone, nor does he deviate from the path which leads to the end of life, to which a man ought to come pure, calm, ready to depart, freely and perfectly reconciled to his lot. 4. When the ruling mind acts according to nature, it so takes the events which happen as to always easily adapt itself to whatever is presented to it, and whatever is possible, for it requires no special materials, but moves toward its purpose, imposing only certain conditions. It makes material for itself out of what opposes it, as fire lays hold of what falls into it. A small light might have been extinguished, but when the fire is strong, it soon appropriates to itself the stuff which is heaped on it, consumes it, and rises higher by means of this very material. Do every act with a purpose, and according to the perfect rules of art. Men seek retreats for themselves, houses in the country, seashores and mountains, and you too are wont to desire such things very much. But this is altogether a mark of the common sort of man, for it is in your power, whenever you shall choose, to retire into yourself. For nowhere, with more quiet or more freedom from trouble, does a man retire than into his own soul, particularly when he has within him such thoughts that by looking into them he is at once perfectly tranquil. And this tranquillity, I am sure, is nothing but the good ordering of the mind. Constantly, then, grant yourself this retreat and refreshment. Let your principles be brief and fundamental, which, as soon as you shall call them to mind, will be sufficient to cleanse the soul completely, and send you back free from all discontent, with the stale things to which you return. For with what are you discontented? With the wickedness of mankind? Recall to your mind these ideas, that rational animals were made for one another, that forbearance is a part of justice, that men do wrong involuntarily. Consider how many already have lived in mutual enmity, suspicion, hatred, and conflict, and now lie dead, reduced to ashes, and be quiet at last. But perhaps you are dissatisfied with what is assigned you out of the universe. Recall to your thoughts this alternative. Either there is a providence, or only atoms. Remember the arguments by which it has been proved that the world is, as it were, one city or community. But perhaps bodily ailments still distress you. Consider then that the mind, when it has once drawn apart and discovered its own power, alters not with the breath, whether that comes gently or violently. Think also of all that you have heard and assented to about pain and pleasure. But perhaps a longing for the thing called fame torments you. See how soon everything is forgotten. Look at the chaos of infinite time on each side of the present, and the emptiness of applause, and the fickleness and poor judgment of those who pretend to praise, and the narrowness of the space within which it is confined. For the whole earth is but a point, and in that how small a nook is this your dwelling, and how few are there within it, and what kind of people are they who will praise you? Remember, then, to retire into this little realm of your own. Above all, do not distract or strain yourself, but be free, and look at things as a man, as a human being, as a citizen, as a mortal. Among the maxims readiest to your hand to which you shall return, let there be these two. 1. That things cannot touch the soul, for they are external and remain motionless. And our perturbations spring from the opinion that is within. The other, that all these things, which you see, are changing now, and soon will no longer be. Bear constantly in mind how many of these changes you have already witnessed. The universe is transformation. Life is a succession of views. If the faculty of understanding is common to us all, the reason also through which we are rational beings is common. If this is so, common also is that reason which tells us what to do and what not to do. If this is so, there is a law common to all men also. If this is so, we are fellow citizens and members of some political community, and thus the world is in a way one commonwealth. Of what other common political community will anyone say that the whole human race are members? And from thence, from this share in a common community, comes also our intellectual faculty and reasoning faculty, and our capacity for law. From where else do they come? For as my earthly part is my portion of certain earth, and my watery part from another element, and what is hot and fiery in me comes from some other distinct source, for nothing comes out of nothing, just as nothing returns to non-existence, so also my intellectual part has its own origin. Death, like generation, is a mystery of nature, a combining of certain elements and a dissolving into the same. In no wise a thing of which a man should be ashamed, for it is appropriate to the nature of a rational animal, and not contrary to the design of our constitution. Some things are naturally done by some kinds of persons. It is a matter of necessity, and if a man will not have it so, he will not allow a fig tree to have juice. But bear this firmly in mind, that within a very short time both you and he will be dead, and soon not even your names will be left behind. Take away your opinion, and there is taken away the complaint, I have been hurt. Take away the complaint, I have been hurt, and the hurt is gone. Whatever does not make a man worse does not make his life worse, nor does it harm him either without or within. It was expedient in nature that it should be so, and therefore necessary. Consider that everything which happens, happens justly, and if you observe carefully, you will find it to be so. I do not say this only as regards the continuity of the sequence of things, but as regards what is just, as if it were ordered by one who assigns to everything its value. Observe, then, as you have begun, and whatever you do it as befits that character of goodness in the sense in which a man is rightfully supposed to be good. Hold to this rule in every act. Do not have the opinion of things that he has who does you wrong, or that he wishes you to have, but look at them as they are in truth. A man should always have these two rules in readiness. First, to do only what the reason of your ruling and legislating faculty suggests for the service of men. Second, to change your opinion whenever anyone at hand sets you right and unsettles you in an opinion. But this change of opinion should come only because you are persuaded that something is just or to the public advantage and the like, not because it appears pleasant or increases your reputation. Have you reason? I have. Why then do you not use it? For if it does its own proper work, what else do you wish? You have lived as a part. You shall disappear in that which produced you. Rather, you shall be received back into the creative principle by a transformation. Many grains of frankincense on the same altar, one falls first, another after, but it makes no difference. If you will return to your principles and the worship of reason, within 10 days you will seem a god to those to whom you are now a beast and an ape. Do not act as if you would live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only what he does himself, that it may be just and pure. As Agathon says, "Look not around at the depraved morals of others, but run straight along your course, without straying from it." He who feels an overwhelming desire for posthumous fame does not consider that all those who remember him will themselves also die very soon. Then they also who succeed them, until the whole remembrance of him is extinguished, for it is transmitted by men who foolishly admire and perish. Even suppose that those who remember you are immortal, and that the remembrance will be immortal. What then is it to you? Not only what is it to the dead, but what is it to the living? What is praise, except indeed so far as it has some utility? And you are now ignoring unseasonably the present gift of nature, clinging to what someone says hereafter. Whatever is in any way beautiful is beautiful in itself, and has its end in itself, and praise is no part of it. Neither worse then, nor better, is a thing made by being praised. I say, this too of things called beautiful by the vulgar, for example, material things and works of art. That which is really beautiful has no need of anything, no more than law, no more than truth, no more than generosity or modesty. Which of these things is made beautiful by being praised, or spoiled by being blamed? Is a jewel, like an emerald, damaged if it is not praised? Or gold, ivory, purple, a lyre, a dagger, a flower, a shrub? If souls go on living, how does the air hold them all from eternity? But how, we reply, does the earth have room for the bodies of those who have been buried from times so remote? Just as here the changing of these bodies after lasting a certain time, and their dissolution, make room for other dead bodies, so the souls which are released into the air, after subsisting for a while, are transmuted and diffused, and turned into fire, and absorbed into the creative intelligence of the universe, and in this way make room for the fresh souls which come to dwell there. This is the answer which a man might give, supposing that souls continue to exist. And we must think not only of the number of bodies which are thus buried, but also of the number that are daily eaten by us and the other animals. What a number is consumed, and thus in a manner buried, in the bodies of those who feed on them! Nevertheless, the earth receives them too, through the changing of these bodies into blood, and their transformation into air or fire. How can we find the truth in this case? Divide it into what is matter and what is cause. Do not be tossed about, but in every act have respect for justice, and at every impression preserve the faculty of understanding. Everything is right for me, which is right for you, O universe. Nothing for me is too early or too late, which comes in due time for you. Everything is fruit to me, which your seasons bring, O nature. From you are all things, in you are all things, to you all things return. The poet says, "Dear city of Cecrops," and will you not say, "Dear city of Zeus"? Busy yourself with but few things, says the philosopher, if you would be tranquil. But consider if it would not be better to say, do what is necessary, and whatever the reason of an animal naturally social requires, and as it requires. For this brings not only the tranquillity which comes from doing well, but also that which comes from doing few things. For most of what we say and do is unnecessary, and if a man leaves them out, he will have more leisure and less trouble. So, on every occasion, a man should ask himself, is this one of the unnecessary things? Further, a man should leave off not only unnecessary acts, but also unnecessary thoughts, for thus superfluous acts will not follow after. Try how the life of the good man suits you, the life of one content with his portion of the whole, and with his own just acts and kindly disposition. Have you seen this side? Look also at the other. Do not be disturbed. Make yourself all simplicity. Does any one do wrong? It is himself that he wrongs. Has anything happened to you? Well, within the universe, from the beginning, every event was apportioned and allotted to you. In a word, your life is short. You must make the most of the present with the aid of reason and justice. Be sober, even in your relaxation. Either it is a well-ordered universe, or chaos huddled together, though still a universe. But can order subsist in you, and disorder in the all? And this too, when all things are so separate and diffused, and yet sympathetic. A black character, a womanish character, a stubborn character, bestial, childish, animal, stupid, false, scurrilous, fraudulent, tyrannical. If the man is a stranger to the universe who does not know what is in it, no less is he a stranger who does not know what is going on in it. He is a runaway who flies from the concerns of society. He is blind who shuts the eyes of his understanding. He is poor who has need of another and finds not in himself all things helpful for life. He is a sore on the universe who withdraws and separates himself from the reason of our common nature, and is displeased with the things that happen. For the same nature that produces them has produced you too. He is a social outcast who cuts his own soul off from the one common soul of all reasonable beings. This is a philosopher without a tunic. The other is without a book. Here is another half naked. Bread I have not, he says, but I abide by reason, and I get no livelihood out of my learning, but I abide by reason. Love the art, poor as it may be, which you have learned, and be content with it, and pass through the rest of life like one who has with his whole soul entrusted to the gods all that he has. Be neither the tyrant nor the slave of any man. Consider, for an example, the times of Vespasian. You will see all the same things, people marrying, bringing up children, sick, dying, fighting, feasting, trafficking, farming, flattering, pushing, suspecting, plotting, wishing for someone to die, grumbling about the present, loving, heaping up treasure, coveting the consulship and kingly power. Well, the life of those people is all over. Come on next to the time of Trajan. Again, all is the same. Their life, too, is gone. In like manner, survey other epochs of time and other nations, and see how many, after mighty efforts, fell and were resolved into the elements. But chiefly recall those whom you yourself have known, distracting themselves about vanities, neglecting to do what was in accord with their proper nature, and to hold firmly to it and be content with it. And here you must remember to give attention to everything in its proper value and proportion, for then you will not be dissatisfied if you give to trifles no more care than is fit. The words that once were in current use are now antiquated, so also the names of men famed of old are now growing antiquated: Camillus, Caeso, Volisus, Leonatus, and soon it will be so of Scipio and Cato, then Augustus, then also Hadrian and Antoninus. For all things quickly pass away, and become a mere tale, and oblivion buries them. And this I say of men who shone in a wondrous way, As for the rest, as soon as they have breathed out their breath, they are gone, and no one speaks of them. In conclusion, what is even eternal fame? A mere nothing. What then is there for which we ought to take serious pains? Only this, to have thoughts just, acts social, words which never lie, and a disposition which gladly accepts whatever happens as necessary, as usual, as flowing from a principle and source of a familiar kind. Willingly give yourself up to Clotho, allowing her to spin your thread into whatever she pleases. Everything lasts only for a day, both that which remembers and that which is remembered. Observe constantly that all things come about by change. Accustom yourself to reflect that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as changing things that are and making new things like them. For everything that exists is, in a way, the seed of what will be, but you are thinking only of the seeds which are cast into the earth or into a womb. This is a very dull notion. You soon will die, and you are not yet simple, nor free from perturbations, and the dread of being hurt by external things, nor are you kindly disposed toward all, nor do you yet see that wisdom consists only in acting justly. Examine men's ruling principles, especially those of the wise, what kind of things they avoid, and what kind they pursue. Your evil lies not in another man's mind, nor yet in any change and mutation of your bodily covering. Where is it, then? It is in that part of you that has the power of forming opinions about evil. Let this power, then, not form opinions, and all is well, nor yet in any change and mutation of your bodily covering. Where is it, then? It is in that part of you that has the power of forming opinions about evil. Let this power, then, not form opinions, and all is well. If that which is nearest to it, the poor body, is cut, burnt, filled with matter and rottenness, nevertheless let the part which forms opinions about such things be quiet. That is, let it judge that nothing is either bad or good that can happen equally to the bad man and the good. For that which happens equally to one who lives contrary to nature, and to one who lives according to nature, is neither according to nature nor contrary to nature. Regard the universe often as one living being, having one substance and one soul, and observe how all things act with one movement, and how all things cooperate as the causes of all that exists. Observe, too, the continuous spinning of the thread, and the single texture of the web. You are a little soul, bearing about a corpse, as Epictetus used to say. It is not evil for things to undergo change, nor good for things to arise in consequence of change. Time is like a river, made up of events that happen, and a violent stream. For as soon as a thing has appeared, it is carried away, and another comes in its place, and this will be carried away too. Everything that happens is as familiar and well known as a rose in spring and fruit in summer, such as disease and death and calumny and treachery, and whatever else delights fools or vexes them. In the sequence of things, those which follow are always aptly fitted to those which have gone before. For the sequence is not like a mere string of disjointed things, which has only an enforced order, but it is a rational connection, and as all existing things are arranged harmoniously together, so the things that come into existence keep not merely a succession, but a certain wonderful relationship. Always remember the saying of Heraclitus, that earth dies to become water, and water dies to become air, and air dies to become fire, and conversely. And think, too, of him who forgets whither the way leads, and the men who quarrel with what they most intimately commune with, the reason that governs the universe, and think the things they daily meet with are strange. Consider that we ought not to act and speak as if we were asleep, for in sleep we seem to be acting and speaking, and that we ought not, like children who learn only from their parents, simply act and speak as we have been taught. If any god told you that you should die tomorrow, or certainly the day after tomorrow, you would not care much whether it was the third day or the morrow, unless you were completely mean-spirited, for the difference is too small to consider. So think it no great matter to die after as many years as you can name, rather than tomorrow. Constantly remember how many physicians are dead after contracting their eyebrows over the sick so many times, and how many astrologers, after predicting the great to-do, the deaths of others, and how many philosophers, after endless discourses on death or immortality, how many heroes, after killing thousands, how many tyrants, who used their power over other men's lives with terrible insolence, as if they themselves were immortal, and how many cities are entirely dead, Hellas, and Pompeii, and Herculaneum, and others innumerable. Add to your reckoning all whom you have known, one after another. One man, after burying another, is laid out dead, and another buries him, and all this in a short time. In conclusion, observe always how ephemeral and worthless human things are, and how what was yesterday a little juice, tomorrow will be a mummy, or ashes. Pass, then, through this moment of time in harmony with nature, and end your journey in content, as an olive falls when it is ripe, blessing nature who produced it, and thanking the tree on which it grew. Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. Am I unhappy because this has happened to me? Not so, but I am happy, though this has happened to me, because I am still free from pain, neither crushed by the present, nor fearing the future. For such a thing might have happened to any man. But every man would not have remained free from pain on such an occasion. Why then is the former rather a misfortune than the latter a good fortune? And do you in any case call that a misfortune which is not a violation of man's nature? And does a thing seem to you a violation of man's nature when it is not contrary to the purpose of man's nature? Well, you know the purpose of nature. Will this which has happened prevent you from being just, magnanimous, temperate, prudent, secure against rash opinions and falsehood? Will it keep you from having modesty, freedom, and every other quality, the presence of which gives to man's nature all that is its own? Remember, too, this maxim on every occasion that tempts you to vexation. This is not a misfortune, and to bear it nobly is good fortune. It is a simple, but still a useful help towards contempt of death, to pass in review those persons who tenaciously stuck to life. What more did they gain than those who died early? Certainly they lie in their tombs somewhere at last. Cadicianus, Fabius, Julianus, Lepidus, and others like them, who carried out many to be buried, and then were carried out themselves. All in all, the interval between birth and death is small. Consider with how much trouble and in what sort of company, and in what a feeble body, this interval is laboriously passed. Do not, then, consider life a thing of any value, for look to the immensity of time behind you, and to the time which is before you, another boundless space. In this infinity, then, what difference is there between one who lives 3 days and one who lives 3 generations? Always hasten by the short way, and the short way is the natural one. Say and do everything in conformity with sound reason, for such a rule frees a man from trouble and strife and artifice and ostentatious display. 5. Whenever in the morning you rise unwillingly, let this thought be with you: I am rising to the work of a human being. Why then am I dissatisfied if I am about to do the things for which I was brought into the world? Or was I made to lie under the bedclothes and keep myself warm? But that is more pleasant, you say. Do you live then to take your pleasure, and not at all for action and exertion? Do you not see the little plants, the little birds, the ants, the spiders, the bees, working together to set in order their several parts of the universe? And are you unwilling to do the work of a human being, not eager to do what belongs to your nature? But I must have rest also. You must. Nature, however, has fixed bounds to this. She has fixed bounds, too, to both eating and drinking. Yet you go beyond these bounds, beyond what is enough. Yet in your work it is not so, and you stop short of what you can do. So you love not yourself, for if you did, you would love your nature and her will. Those who love their own trades exhaust themselves in working at them, unwashed and without food. But you value your own nature less than the carpenter values his craft, or the dancer his dancing art, or the lover of money his money, or the vainglorious man his little glory. Such men, when they have a strong love for a thing, choose neither to eat nor to sleep until they perfect the thing they care for. But is service to society less valuable in your eyes, and less worthy of your labor? How easy it is to obliterate and wipe away every impression which is troublesome or unsuitable, and immediately to be in complete tranquillity. Think no word and deed beneath you which is in accordance with nature, and be not diverted by some people's fault-finding, nor by their words. But if a thing is good to do or say, do not consider it unworthy of you. For these other persons have their own guiding principle and follow their own impulses. Do not regard such things, but go straight on, following your nature and the common nature, and the way of both is one. I pass through the things which happen according to nature until I fall and rest, breathing out my breath into that element from which I daily draw it in, and falling upon that earth out of which my father collected his seed, and my mother her blood, and my nurse her milk, out of which for so many years I have been supplied with food and drink, which bears me when I tread on it, and abuse it for my many purposes. You say that you have no keenness of wit. Be it so, but there are many other things of which you cannot say that nature has not endowed you. Show those qualities, then, which are perfectly in your power: sincerity, gravity, patience in labor, aversion to pleasure, contentment with your lot and with little, frankness, dislike of superfluity, freedom from pettiness. Do you not see how many qualities you are immediately able to exhibit, as to which you have no excuse of natural incapacity and unfitness, and yet you still remain voluntarily below what you might be? Or are you compelled, because nature furnished you poorly, to murmur, and be stingy, and to flatter, and to find fault with your poor body, and to try to please other men, and to make a great display, and to be so restless in your mind? No, by the gods, you might have been delivered from these things long ago. But if in truth you can be accused of being rather slow and dull of comprehension, you must exert yourself about this also, not neglecting it, nor yet finding pleasure in your dullness. One man, when he has done a service to another, is ready to set it down on his account as a favor conferred. Another is not apt to do this, but still in his own mind he thinks of the other man as his debtor, and knows what he has done. A third hardly knows what he has done, but is like a vine which has produced grapes, and asks nothing more once it has produced its proper fruit. As a horse when it has run its race, a dog when it has tracked its game, a bee when it has made its honey, so a man, when he has done a good act, does not call out for others to come and see, but goes on to another act, as a vine goes on to produce again the grapes in season. Should a man then be one of these who act thus without being conscious of it? Yes. But a man must observe what he is doing, for it is characteristic of the social animal to perceive that he is working in a social manner, and then to want his companion also to perceive it. It is true what you say, but you do not rightly understand what I have now said. For this reason, you will become one of those I first mentioned, for they are misled by a certain show of reason. But if you will choose to understand the meaning of what I said, do not fear that on that account you will omit any social act. A prayer of the Athenians. Rain, rain, O dear Zeus, down on the ploughed fields of the Athenians, and on the plains. In truth we either ought not to pray at all, or we ought to pray in this simple and noble fashion. Just as we understand when we are told that Aesculapius prescribed for this man horseback exercise, or bathing in cold water, or going without shoes, so we must understand it when we are told that nature prescribed for this man sickness, or mutilation, or loss of something else of the kind. For in the first case, prescribed means something like this: he prescribed this treatment for this man as a thing adapted to restore health. In the second case, it means that which happens to each man is fixed for him in a manner suitable to his destiny. For this is what we mean when we say that things are suitable to us, as workmen say of squared stones in walls or pyramids, that they are suitable when they fit together into a given whole. For in everything there is one fitness, and as the universe is made up of all bodies to be the body it is, so out of all existing causes fate is made up to be the cause it is. Even ignorant people understand what I mean, for they say, "This thing befell so-and-so. This then was sent, and this was appointed to him." Let us then accept our destiny, as well as the prescriptions of Aesculapius. Many, as a matter of fact, even among his prescriptions, are disagreeable, but we accept them in the hope of health. Take the performing and accomplishment of the things which common nature judges to be good, as you take your health. So accept everything which happens, even though it seems disagreeable, because it leads to the health of the universe, and to the prosperity and felicity of Zeus. For he would not have brought on any man what he has brought, if it were not useful for the whole. Neither does the nature of anything, whatever it may be, cause anything which is not suitable to that which is under its direction. For two reasons, then, you should be content with whatever happens to you. First, because it was done for you and prescribed for you, and had some reference to you from the beginning, and the most ancient causes spun it with your destiny. Secondly, because even that which happens separately to each individual is to the power which administers the universe a cause of felicity and perfection, nay, even of its own continuance. For the perfection of the whole is mutilated if you cut off anything whatever from the network and continuity of either the parts or the causes. And you do cut something off, as far as it is in your power, when you are displeased, and try to put it out of your way. Be not unhappy or discouraged or dissatisfied if you do not succeed in acting always by the right principles, but when you have failed, try again, and be content if most of your acts are consistent with man's nature. Love that to which you return. Do not return to philosophy as if she were a schoolmaster, but behave like those who have sore eyes and apply a bit of sponge or an egg, or like another who applies a plaster or a water lotion. For thus you will not fail to obey reason, and will find rest in it. And remember that philosophy requires only the things which your nature requires, but you would have something else which is not according to nature. You may object, "Why, what is more agreeable than this I am doing?" But is not this just how pleasure deceives us? And consider whether magnanimity, freedom, simplicity, equanimity, piety are not more agreeable. And what is more agreeable than wisdom itself, when you think of the security and the happy course of all things which result from the faculty of understanding and knowledge? The world is so enveloped in veils that it has seemed to many distinguished philosophers altogether unintelligible. Nay, even to the Stoics themselves it is difficult to understand. And all our views are changeable, for where is the man who never changes? Carry your thoughts, then, on to the objects themselves, and consider how short-lived they are, and worthless, and how they may be the possession of a filthy wretch, or a whore, or a robber. Then turn to the morals of those who lived with you. Hardly is it possible to endure even the best of them, to say nothing of being hardly able to endure oneself. In such darkness and dirt, in so constant a flux of substance and time and motion and things moved, what there is worth being highly prized, or even seriously pursued, I cannot imagine. On the other hand, it is a man's duty to comfort himself and wait for his natural dissolution, and not be vexed at the delay, but rest in these two ideas. First, that nothing will happen to me which is not in harmony with the nature of the universe, and second, that it is in my power never to act contrary to my God and divinity, for there is no man who can compel me to this. About what am I now employing my soul? Frequently I must ask myself this question, and inquire, what have I now in that part of me they call the ruling principle? And whose soul have I now? That of a child? Of a young man? Of a feeble woman? Of a tyrant? Of a domestic animal? Or of a wild beast? What kind of things they are that the crowd thinks good, we may learn from this. If men should decide on certain things as being really good, such as prudence, temperance, justice, fortitude, he would not, after having decided on them, consent to listen to anything not in harmony with the really good. But if a man has accepted as good the things which appear good to the crowd, he will yet listen and enjoy as very appropriate the jibes of the comic writers. Thus even the crowd perceives the difference. For were it not so, a jibe against real good would not offend, and would not be rejected, while, when applied to wealth and methods for getting luxury or fame, we accept it as fitting and witty. Go on, then, and ask if we should value and believe those things to be good, to which, when we think of them, we know the jest of the comic writer might be aptly applied, that he who has them, through pure excess of luxury, has not a spot to be comfortable in. I am composed of form and matter. Neither of them will perish into nothingness, as neither of them came into being out of nothingness. Every part of me, then, will be reduced by change into some other part of the universe. That again will change into another part of the universe, and so on forever. And as a result of such a change, I too now exist, and those who begot me existed, and so on forever in the other direction. For nothing prevents us from saying this, even if the universe works by definite periods of revolution. Reason and the reasoning art, philosophy, are powers sufficient to themselves and for their own work. They start from a first principle, which is their own, and make their way to the end which they set before them, and this is why reasonable acts are called right acts, for they proceed by the right road. None of the things ought to be called a man's which do not belong to him as man. Such things are not required of a man, nor does man's nature promise them, nor are they a means by which man's nature attains its end. Neither, then, does the end of man lie in such things, nor that which consummates this end, that is, the good. Besides, if any such things did belong to man, it would not be right for him to despise them and set himself against them, nor would a man deserve praise who showed that he did not want these things, nor would he who stinted himself of them be good, if indeed these things were good. But now the more of these things a man deprives himself of, or of other things like them, or when he is deprived of any of them, the more patiently he endures the loss. To that same degree he is a better man. Such as are your constant thoughts, such will be the character of your mind. For the soul is colored by the thoughts. Color it then with a continuous line of thoughts such as these, that wherever a man can live, there he can also live well. But he has to live in a palace. Well, then, he can live well even in a palace. Again, consider that for whatever purpose a thing has been designed, for this it has been designed, and towards this it is carried. And where the end is, there also is the advantage and the good of the thing. Now, the good for a reasonable animal is society. That we are made for society, I have shown already. Is it not plain that lower things exist for the sake of the higher, and the things which have life are superior to the things which have not, and of living beings the higher are those which have reason? To look for the impossible is folly, and it is impossible that bad men should not do bad deeds. Nothing happens to any man which he is not framed by nature to bear. The same misfortunes may happen to another, who either because he does not see what has happened, or because he wants to show a great spirit, is firm and comes out unharmed. It is a shame to let ignorance and complacency be stronger than wisdom. Outward things cannot touch the soul, not in the least degree. nor have they admission to the soul, nor can they turn or move the soul. But the soul turns and moves itself alone. Whatever judgments it may think proper to make, it makes for itself of the things which present themselves to it. Man is the nearest thing to me, in so far as I must do good to men and bear with them. But when men act as obstacles to my proper work, man becomes to me one of the things that are indifferent, as much so as the sun or wind or a wild beast. These, it is true, may impede my work, but they are no hindrance to my intentions and disposition, which have the power of changing and adapting themselves to conditions. For the mind converts and changes every obstacle to its activity into an aid, so that obstacles to action actually further it, and help us along the road. Honor what is best in the universe. This is what controls all things and directs all things. In like manner, honor also what is best in yourself, and this is akin to the other, for in yourself also it is that which controls everything else, and your life is directed by it. That which does no harm to the state does no harm to the citizen. In the case of any appearance of harm, apply this rule: if the state is not harmed by this, neither am I hurt. But if the state is harmed, you must not be angry with him who injures the state. Show him where his error is. Think often of the speed with which things pass and disappear, both the things which are and the things which are being produced. For matter is like a river in a continual flow, and the activities of things are constantly shifting, and the causes work in infinite varieties. There is hardly anything which stands still. And consider this which stands near you, this boundless abyss of the past and the future, in which all things disappear. Why then is he not a fool who is puffed up over such things, or plagued about them, making himself miserable? For they vex him only for a time, and a very short time. Think of universal substance, of which you have a very small portion, and of universal time, of which a short and indivisible moment has been assigned to you, and of the fate which is fixed by destiny, and how small a part of it you are. Does another do me wrong? Let him look to it. The disposition was his, and the activity was his. I have what universal nature wills me to have, and I do what my own nature wills me to do. Let that part of your soul which leads and governs be undisturbed by motions of the flesh, whether of pleasure or of pain. Let it not mingle with them, but let it set a wall around itself, and keep those emotions in their place. But when the emotions rise up to the mind by virtue of the sympathy that naturally exists in a body, which is all one, then you must not strive to resist the feeling, for it is natural, but let not your ruling part add to the feeling the opinion that it is either good or bad. Live with the gods, and he does live with the gods who constantly shows them that his soul is satisfied with what is assigned to him, and that it obeys all the divinity wills, that divinity which Zeus has given every man as his guardian and guide, a portion of himself, his understanding and reason. Are you irritated with one whose armpits smell? Are you angry with one whose mouth has a foul odor? What good will your anger do you? He has his mouth, he has these armpits. Such emanations must come from such things. But the man has reason, you will say, and he could, if he took pains, discover wherein he offends. I wish you well of your discovery. Now you too have reason. By your rational faculty, stir up his rational faculty, show him his fault, admonish him. For if he listens, you will cure him, and have no need of anger. You are not a ranter or a whore. As you intend to live hereafter, it is in your power to live here. But if men do not permit you, then slip away out of life, yet as if you felt it no harm. The house is smoky, and I leave it. Why do you call this trouble? But as long as nothing of the kind drives me out, I stay. I am free, and no man shall hinder me from doing what I choose. And I choose to do what befits the nature of a rational and social animal. The mind of the universe is social. Accordingly, it has made inferior things for the sake of superior, and has tied the superior to one another. You see how it has subordinated, coordinated, and assigned to each its proper lot, and brought together into concord with one another the things which are best. How have you behaved hitherto towards the gods, your parents, brothers, children, teachers, towards those who looked after your infancy, your friends, kinsfolk, slaves? Consider if you have hitherto behaved to them all in such a way that it may be said of you, never has he wronged a man in deed or word. And call to recollection how many things you have experienced, and how many things you have endured, and how the history of your life is now complete, and your service ended, and how many beautiful things you have seen, and how many pleasures and pains you have despised, and how many things called honors you have spurned, and to how many ill-minded folks you have shown a kind disposition. Why do unskilled and ignorant souls confound those who have skill and wisdom? But what soul has skill and wisdom? The soul which knows beginning and end, and knows the reason which pervades all substance, and which through all eternity, in periodic cycles, administers the universe. Soon, very soon, you will be ashes or a skeleton, a name, or not even a name. And what is name but sound and echo? And the things much valued in life are empty and rotten and trifling, like little dogs biting one another, and like children quarreling, laughing, and then straightway weeping. But fidelity and modesty and justice and truth are fled. Up to Olympus from the widespread earth. What then is there now to detain you here, if the objects of sense are changeable and never stand still, and our organs of perception are dull and easily receive false impressions, and the poor soul itself is an exhalation from the blood? But wide repute amid such a world as this is an empty thing. Why then do you not wait in tranquillity for your end, whether that is extinction or removal to another state? And until that time comes, what is your duty? Why, what else but to venerate the gods and bless them, and do good to men, and practice tolerance and self-restraint? But as to whatever lies beyond the confines of your poor flesh and breath, to remember that it is neither yours nor in your power. You can pass your life in a calm flow of happiness if you can take the right way, and think and act in the right way. The two things common both to the soul of God and to the soul of man, and to the soul of every rational being, are not to be hindered in their purpose by another, and to hold as good the disposition to justice and the practice of it, and in this to let your desire find its satisfaction. If the fault is neither my own, nor the result of my own badness, and the common weal is not hurt, why trouble about it? What hurt is it to the common weal? Do not be carried away rashly by the appearance of things. Help everyone according to your ability and their fitness. If they have suffered a loss in matters indifferent, do not imagine it to be a calamity, for that is a bad habit. But as the old man, when he went away, asked for his foster child's top, remembering that it was a top, so do you in this case also. When you are declaiming on the rostra, have you forgotten, man, what these things really are? Yes, but they are matters of great importance to the people. Will you too, then, be made a fool for these things? Wheresoever stranded, I can at any time become a man of fortune, for fortune means that a man has found for himself a happy lot, and a happy lot is a good disposition of the soul, good impulses, good actions. 6. The substance of the universe is obedient and pliable, and the reason which governs it has itself no cause for doing evil, for it has no malice, nor does it do evil to anything, nor is anything harmed by it. But all things are made and perfected through this reason. Care not whether you are cold or warm, if you are doing your duty, or whether you are weary or satisfied with sleep, or whether ill-spoken of or praised, or whether dying or doing anything else. For dying is one of the acts of life. It is enough in this act also to do well what there is to do. Look beneath the surface. Let neither the peculiar quality of anything nor its value escape you. All existing things change quickly, and they will either be reduced to vapor, if indeed all substance is one, or they will be dispersed. The reason which governs knows what its own nature is, and what it does, and on what material it works. The best way of avenging yourself is not to become like the wrongdoer. Take pleasure and comfort in one thing, in passing from one social act to another social act, thinking of God. The ruling mind rouses and turns itself, and while it makes itself what it is, and what it wills to be, it also makes everything that happens appear to be what it wills it shall be. In accord with the nature of the universe, every single thing takes place. Certainly it is not according to any other nature that they are brought to pass, whether a nature that outwardly envelops this, or a nature that is included within this nature, or a nature outside and independent of this. The universe is either a confusion, an intermingling of atoms, and a scattering, or it is unity and order, and providence. If it is the former, why do I wish to tarry amid such a haphazard confusion and disorder? Why do I care about anything but how I may at last become earth? And why do I trouble myself? For my elements will be scattered, whatever I do. But if the other supposition is true, I revere, I stand firm, and I trust in him who governs. When circumstances have compelled you to be a little disturbed, return to yourself quickly, and do not continue out of tune longer than the compulsion lasts, for you will be more the master of the harmony by continually returning to it. Suppose you had a stepmother and a mother at the same time. You would be dutiful to your stepmother, but still you would constantly return to your mother. Let the court and philosophy now be to you as stepmother and mother. Return to philosophy frequently, and repose in her, for through her your life in the court becomes tolerable, and you are tolerable to the court. When we have meat before us and other viands, we still have the impression that this is but the dead body of a fish, and this but the dead body of a bird, or of a pig, and again, that this Falernian wine is only a little grape juice, and this purple robe Some sheep's wool dyed with the blood of a shellfish. Such, then, are our impressions, and they reach to the things themselves and penetrate them. So we see what kind of things they are. In just the same way ought we to act all through life. And where things appear most worthy of our liking, we should lay them bare and look at their worthlessness, and strip them of all the worlds by which they were exalted. For outward show is a wonderful perverter of reason, and when you are most sure that the things you are busy about are worth your pains, it is then that it cheats you most. Consider what Crates says even of Xenocrates. Most things which the multitude admire are connected with objects of the most general kind, things formed by bare cohesion, or natural organisms, such as stones, wood, fig trees, vines, olives. But men, who are a little more rational, admire things united by some living principle, such as flocks and herds. Men who are still more instructed admire things inspired by a universal soul, but rational, such as a soul skilled in some art, or expert in some other way, or rational simply as possessing a number of slaves. But he who values a rational soul, that is, universal and framed for political life, regards nothing but this. Above all else, he keeps his own soul in a condition and in an activity right for reason and social life, and he cooperates to this end with men of the same kind as himself. Some things are pressing into existence, and others are hurrying out of it. And of that which is coming into existence, a part is already extinguished. Motion and change are continually renewing the world, just as the uninterrupted course of time is always renewing the infinite duration of ages. In this flowing stream, on which there is no abiding, what is there of the things that hasten by, on which a man would set a high price? It would be as if a man should fall in love with a sparrow flying by, that is already passed out of sight. Every man's life is but an exhalation of the blood, and a little breathing of the air. For, like drawing in the air and giving it back, which we do every moment, the whole quickening power received at birth is now given back to the element whence it came. Neither is transpiration, as in plants, a thing to be valued, nor respiration, as in tame animals and wild beasts, nor impressions from the appearance of things, nor subjection to desire, like a puppet on strings, nor crowding in herds, nor getting nourishment from food. This last is merely an act of separating and parting with the useless part of our food. What, then, is worth your esteem? To be greeted with clapping of hands? No. Neither should we value the clapping of tongues, for the praise of the multitude is a clapping of tongues. Suppose, then, that you have dispensed with the worthless thing called fame. What remains that is worth having? This, in my opinion, to move yourself and govern yourself in harmony with your proper nature, which is the end of all occupations and all arts. For the aim of every art is right adaptation of the product to the end for which it is produced. The vine-planter, who looks after his vines, and the trainer of horses and dogs labor for this end. The education and teaching of youth aim also at something. In this is the value of the education and the teaching. And if this is achieved, you will not seek anything else. Will you go on desiring many other things too? Then you will be neither free nor sufficient for your own happiness, nor clear of passion. For of necessity you must be envious, jealous, and suspicious of those who can take away the things valued by you, and plot against those who have them. Of necessity, a man must be always in a state of perturbation who wants any of these things. Besides, he must often find fault with the gods. But to reverence and honor your own mind will make you content with yourself, and serviceable to society, and at peace with the gods, praising all they give and have ordained. Above, below, all around are the movements of the elements, but the motion of virtue is not theirs. It is something more divine. Advancing by a way hardly observed, it goes happily on its road. How strangely men act! They will not praise those who are living at the same time with themselves, but to be themselves praised by posterity, by persons they have never seen and never will see. This they set a high value on. But it is much the same as if you should grieve because those who lived before you did not praise you. Because a thing is difficult for you to do, do not think it is impossible for any man. But whatever is possible for any man to do, and right for his nature, think that you can achieve it too. Suppose a man scratches you with his nails in gymnastic exercises, and hits your head, and wounds it. We show no signs of vexation, nor are we offended, nor do we suspect him afterwards as a treacherous fellow. We are on our guard against him, but not as an enemy, nor yet with suspicion, but we quietly get out of his way. Let your behavior be like this in all spheres of life. Let us overlook many things in those who are only like antagonists in the gymnasium, for it is in our power, as I said, to get out of their way and to feel no suspicion or hatred. If any man can convince and show me that I do not think or act right, I will gladly change, for I seek truth, by which no man was ever injured. But he is injured who abides in his error and ignorance. I do my duty. Other things do not trouble me, for they are either things without life, or things without reason, or things that have wandered and know not the way. As for the animals, which have no reason, and generally all things and objects, since you have reason, and they have none, use them in a generous and considerate spirit. Treat human beings, since they have reason, in a social spirit, and on all occasions call on the gods, and do not worry yourself over the length of time you shall spend doing this. Even 3 hours so spent are well spent. Alexander the Macedonian and his groom were brought by death to the same state, for either they were received back into the same creative principles of the universe, or they were alike dispersed among the atoms. Consider how many things in the same indivisible time take place in each of us, things affecting the body, and things affecting the soul. Then you will not wonder that many more things, or rather all things which come into existence in the one, and the all which we call the cosmos, exist in it at the same time. If any man should ask you how to spell the name Antoninus, would you shout each letter angrily? What then if he grows angry? Will you be angry too? Or will you quietly tell him the letters? So in this life also remember that each duty is made up of certain parts. These it is your duty to observe, and, without showing impatience or anger toward those who are angry with you, go on your way and finish that which is set before you. How cruel it is not to allow men to strive for the things which seem to them suitable to their natures and profitable. Yet, in a way, you are not allowing them to do this, when you are vexed because they do wrong. For they are certainly moved to do things they suppose to be suitable to their natures and profitable to them. But it is not so. Teach them, then, and show them without being angry. Death is a cessation of impressions through the senses. and of pulling of the strings which move our appetites, and of discursive movements of our thoughts, and of service to the flesh. It is a shame when the soul is first to give way in this life, and the body does not give way. Take care that you turn not into a Caesar, that you are not dyed with that dye, for such things happen. Keep yourself simple, good, pure, serious, free from affectation, a friend of justice, a worshipper of the gods, kind, affectionate, strenuous in all right acts. Strive to advance toward what philosophy tried to make you. Reverence the gods and help men. Life is short. There is only one fruit of this earthly life, a pious disposition and social acts. Do everything as a disciple of Antoninus. Remember his constancy in rational behavior, his even temper in all things, his piety, and the serenity of his countenance, his sweetness, his disregard of empty fame, and his effort to understand things, how he would never let anything pass without having first carefully examined it and clearly understood it. How he bore with those who blamed him unjustly without blaming them in return. How he did nothing in a hurry. How he refused to listen to calumnies. How exact an examiner of manners and actions he was, not given to reproach people, nor timid, nor suspicious, nor pedantic. With how little he was satisfied in the way of lodging, bed, dress, food, servants. How laborious and patient, how he was able, because of his sparing diet, to hold out to evening, not even requiring to relieve himself by evacuations except at the usual hour. His firmness and steadiness in friendship, how he tolerated freedom of speech in those who opposed his opinions, the pleasure he had when any man showed him anything better, and how religious he was without superstition. Imitate all this, and you may have as good a conscience as he had when your last hour comes. Return to your sober senses and recall yourself. When you have roused yourself from sleep and perceived that they were only dreams which troubled you, then in your waking hours look at the things about you as you looked at the dreams. I consist of a little body and a soul. Now, to this little body all things are morally indifferent, for it is not able to perceive differences. But to the understanding all things are indifferent, except its own activities, and these are all in its power. Of these, however, only its present acts matter, for both the future and the past activities of the mind are for the present indifferent. Neither the labor of the hand nor of the foot is contrary to nature, so long as the foot does a foot's work and the hand a hand's. Then neither for man as man is labor contrary to nature, so long as he does the things of a man. And if the labor is not contrary to his nature, neither is it an evil to him. How many pleasures have been enjoyed by robbers, patricides, tyrants? Do you not see how craftsmen accommodate themselves, up to a certain point, to those who are novices in their craft, yet hold fast to the principles of their art, and refuse to depart from them? Is it not strange that an architect or a physician should have more respect for the principles of his art than man for his own reason, which he shares with the gods? Asia and Europe are but corners of the universe. All the sea is a drop in the universe. Athos, a little clod of the universe, the present time a point in eternity. All things are small, changeable, perishable. All things come from that universal ruling power either directly or as indirect consequence. Accordingly, the lion's gaping jaws, and all harmful things like thorns or mud, are the outcome of the grand and beautiful. Do not imagine they are different in kind from that which you revere, but form a just opinion of the source of all. He who has seen the present age has seen all, both all that has taken place from eternity, and all that will be through time without end. For all things are of one kind, and of one form. Consider frequently the connection of all things in the universe, and their relation to one another. For things are somehow implicated with one another, and all in a way friendly to one another. For one thing follows in order after another, and this is by virtue of their active movement, and mutual agreement, and the unity of their substance. Adapt yourself to the things among which your lot has been cast, and to the men among whom you have your portion. Love them, and do it truly, sincerely. Every instrument, tool, vessel that does what it is made for is good, though he who made it is not there. But when things are formed by nature, there is within them and abides in them the power which made them. Wherefore, the more should you reverence this power, and think that if you live and act according to its will, everything in you is in accord with intelligence. Thus also in the universe, the things which belong to it are in accord with intelligence. If of the things not within your power you suppose some to be good for you and others evil, it must be that when one of the bad things befalls you, or the loss of one of the good things, you still blame the gods, and hate men too, whoever are the cause of the misfortune, or the loss, or are suspected of being probably the cause, and we do much injustice, because we do not regard these things as indifferent. But if we think that only the things which are in our power are good or bad, we have no reason either for finding fault with God, or taking a hostile attitude to man. We are all working together to one end, some with knowledge and design, others without knowing what they do, like men asleep, of whom Heraclitus, I think it is, says that they too are laborers and co-operators in what goes on in the universe. But men cooperate after different fashions. Even those who find fault with what happens are cooperating abundantly. For the universe has need even of such men as these. It remains for you to understand among what kind of workmen you station yourself, for he who rules all things will certainly make a right use of you, and receive you among some group of cooperators, and those whose labors conduce to the one end. But do not play such a part as the mean and ridiculous verse in the play which Chrysippus speaks of. Does the sun attempt to do the work of the rain, or Aesculapius the work of Ceres? And how is it with the stars? Are they not different, and yet they work together to the same end? If the gods have decreed about me, and about the things which must happen to me, they have decreed well, for it is absurd to imagine a deity without forethought. And as for doing me harm, why should they desire that? What advantage would result from it to them, or to the whole, which is the special object of their providence? But if they issued no decree about me individually, they have certainly ordained things for the whole at least, and the things which happen by way of result in the general arrangement I ought to accept with pleasure, and be content with them. But if the gods decide nothing, which is wicked to believe, let us neither sacrifice, nor pray, nor swear by them, nor do anything else we did when we believed the gods were present and lived with us. If then the gods have no care of the things which concern us, I can take care of myself, and I can inquire into what is useful, and to every man that is useful, which is in harmony with his constitution and nature. My nature is rational and social, and my city and country, so far as I am Antoninus, is Rome, and so far as I am a man, is the world. Whatever, then, is of use to these societies is of use to me. Whatever happens to the individual is for the interest of the universal. This should be sufficient. But further, you will observe this general truth, that whatever is profitable to any man is profitable also to other men. Take the word profitable here in the common sense as applying to things of the middle sort, neither good nor bad. Even as it happens to you in the theatre and such places, that the continual sight of the same things, or the monotony, makes the show wearisome, so it is all through life, for everything above and below is the same, and comes from the same. How long, then, to the end? Think continually that all kinds of men, of all kinds of professions, and of all nations are dead, and let your thoughts come down even to Philistion, and Phoebus, and Oreganion. Now turn your thoughts to other generations. We, too, must remove to that place where so many great orators, so many noble philosophers, Heraclitus, Pythagoras, Socrates, so many heroes of former days, and so many generals after them, and tyrants, have gone, and in their train Eudoxus, Hipparchus, Archimedes, and other men of keen natural talents, great minds, great lovers of labor, versatile, confident, mockers even of the perishable and ephemeral life of man, such as Menippus and others like him. Consider of all these that they have long been dust. What harm is this to them, or what to those whose names are quite unknown? Only one thing here is worth much, to pass your life in truth and justice, and show benevolence even to liars and unjust men. When you wish to enjoy yourself, think of the virtues of those who live with you. The activity, for instance, of one, the modesty of another, the liberality of a third, and some other good quality of a fourth. For nothing is so cheering as examples of the virtues exhibited in the characters of those who live with us, when they appear in all possible abundance. Wherefore we must keep them before us. Are you rebellious because you weigh so many pounds less than 300? Be not rebellious, then, that you must live only so many years, and not more. For as you are satisfied with the amount of substance which has been assigned you, so be content with the time. Let us try to persuade men to behave reasonably, but for yourself act even against their will when the law of justice directs you that way. If, however, anyone forcibly obstructs you, resign yourself to contentment and tranquillity. At the same time, make use of his obstruction to exercise some other virtue. Remember that you made your attempt conditionally, that you did not expect to do the impossible. What then did you expect? To make the attempt as you have done, and you have attained your object, even if the things which you were striving to reach are not accomplished. The lover of fame relies on other men's activities for his own good, the lover of pleasure on his sensations, but the man of understanding knows that his own acts are his good. It is in our power to refrain from any opinion about things, and not to be disturbed in our souls, for things in themselves have no natural power to force our judgments. Accustom yourself to listen carefully to another man's words, and as much as possible be in the speaker's mind. That which is not good for the swarm is not good for the single bee. If the sailors abused the helmsman, or the sick the doctor, would they listen to anybody else, and how then could the helmsman ensure the safety of those in the ship, or the doctor the health of his patients? How many of the people who came into the world with me are already gone out of it? Honey tastes bitter to the jaundiced, and water is horrible to a person with rabies. And a ball is a fine thing to little children. Why then am I angry with anyone? Do you think that a false opinion has less power than bile in the jaundiced, or poison in one who is bitten by a mad dog? No man can hinder you from living according to the reason of your own nature. Nothing will happen to you contrary to the reason of universal nature. What kind of people are those whom men strive to please? And for what objects, and by what kind of acts? How soon will time cover all things, and how many has it covered already? 7. What is evil? It is something you have often seen, and whatever happens, keep this in mind, that it is something you have seen again and again. Everywhere up and down you will find the same things with which histories are filled, in the olden times, in medieval times, and today, repeating themselves in our cities and homes. There is nothing new. All things are familiar, and quickly over. How can our opinions cool down unless the impressions on which they rest are obliterated? But it is in your power continuously to fan your thoughts into a flame. I can have the opinion about anything which I ought to have. If I can, why then am I disturbed? The things which lie outside my mind need have no relation at all to my mind. Be sure of this, and you stand erect. It is in your power to restore yourself to life. Look at things again as you once looked at them, for this will bring you new life. A piece of pageantry, a stage play, flocking sheep and herding cows, exercise with spears, bones cast to puppies, crusts tossed into fish-ponds, the laboring of ants over their burdens, the running about of frightened little mice, puppets dancing on strings, all are the same. Your duty in the midst of such things is to show good humor and not a proud air, and to understand that a man is worth just as much as the things about which he busies himself. In conversation you should attend to what is being said, and in action you should observe what is happening. In the first you should see immediately the end intended, and in the second watch carefully for the meaning. Is my understanding sufficient for this work or not? If sufficient, I use it for the work as an instrument given me by universal nature. If it is not sufficient, then either I retire from the work and give place to one who can do it better, unless there is some reason why I ought not to do so, or else I do it as well as I can, allying myself with a man who, with the aid of my intelligence, can do what is wanted and what is useful for the general good. For whatsoever I can do, either alone or with another, ought to be directed only toward that which is useful and advantageous to society. How many who were once celebrated by fame have now been lost in oblivion, and how many who once celebrated the fame of others have long been dead? Be not ashamed to take help. Your business is to do your duty as a soldier does in an assault on a town. Suppose you are lame and cannot mount the battlements alone. With the help of another you can reach them. Let not the future disturb you. You will face it with the same reason which you now use for present things. All parts of the universe are interwoven with one another, and the bond is sacred. Nothing is unconnected with some other thing, for all things have been coordinated and combined to form the same universe. There is one universe made up of everything, and one God who pervades everything, and one substance, one law, one common reason in all intelligent animals, and one truth. Perchance indeed there is one perfection for all beings of the same stock, who participate in the same reason. Everything material soon disappears into the sum of being, and every form is soon taken back into the universal reason, and the memory of everything is soon overwhelmed in time. To a rational being, the act that is according to nature is according to reason. Stand erect, or be helped to stand erect. As it is with members of unified bodies, so it is with rational beings that exist separate, but are designed for cooperation. You will realize this more if you say often to yourself, "I am a member of a system of rational beings." But if you say only you are a part, you do not yet love mankind from your heart. Doing good does not yet delight you for its own sake. You still do it merely as an act of politeness, not yet as doing good to yourself. Let accidents happen as they will on the parts that feel the injury, and parts that have felt may complain if they choose. But I, unless I think that the accident is an evil, am not injured, and it is in my power not to think so. Whatever anyone else does or says, my duty is to be good, just as gold or an emerald or purple always says. Whatever anyone else does or says, I must be an emerald and keep my color. The ruling mind does not disturb itself. Does not frighten itself or cause itself pain. If anyone else can frighten or pain it, let him do so. The mind itself, of its own judgment, will not turn to such ways. Let the body take care, if it can, that it suffers nothing, but let it speak if it suffers. But the soul, the seat of fear and pain, has full power to form an opinion about these things, and need suffer nothing, unless at times it deviates into such an opinion. The mind in itself wants nothing, unless it creates a want for itself. Therefore it is both free from perturbation and unimpeded, if it does not perturb and impede itself. Happiness is a good divinity, or a good thing. What then are you doing here, O imagination? Go away. I entreat you by the gods, as you did come, for I want you not. But you are come as you have been used to do. I am not angry with you, only go away. Is anyone afraid of change? Why, what can be done without change? What is more pleasing or more suitable to universal nature? Can you take a bath unless the wood undergoes a change? Can you be nourished unless your food undergoes a change? Can anything else useful be accomplished without change? Do you not then see that for yourself also change is the same, and equally necessary for the universal nature? Through the universal substance, as through a furious torrent, all bodies are carried, while by their nature united with and cooperating with the whole, as the parts of your body do with one another. How many a Chrysippus, how many a Socrates, how many an Epictetus has time already swallowed up? Apply this same thought to every man and thing. One thing only troubles me, that I may do something which the nature of man forbids, or in the way it forbids, or at a forbidden time. Soon you will have forgotten all things, and soon all things will have forgotten you. It is peculiar to man to love even those who do him wrong. This happens if when they do wrong you remember they are kinsmen, and wrong you through ignorance and in time. Soon you will have forgotten all things, and soon all things will have forgotten you. It is peculiar to man to love even those who do him wrong. This happens if when they do wrong you remember they are kinsmen, and wrong you through ignorance and unintentionally. and soon both of you will die. Above all, that the wrongdoer has done you no harm, for he has not made your mind worse than it was before. The universal nature out of the universal substance, as if it were wax, now molds a horse. When it has broken this up, it uses the material for a tree, then for a man, then for something else, and each of these things lasts for a very short time. But it is no hardship for the vessel to be broken up, as there was none for it to be fastened together. A scowling look is quite unnatural. When one often assumes it, the result is that all one's comeliness fades, and at last is so completely extinguished that it cannot again be lighted up at all. Look to conclude from this that scowls are contrary to reason. For if all knowledge of doing wrong is lost, what reason is there for living any longer? Nature, that governs the whole, will soon change all things which you see, and out of their substance will make other things, and again other things from the substance of them, in order that the world may be ever new. When a man has done you any wrong, immediately consider with what notion of good and evil he acted in doing wrong. When you have seen this, you will pity him, and will neither wonder nor be angry. For either you think the same thing to be good that he does, or something of the same kind. It is your duty then to pardon him. But if you do not hold the same notions of good or evil, you will more readily be charitable to him who is in error. Think less of what you have not than of what you have. Of the things you have, select the best. Then reflect how eagerly you would have labored for them if you had them not. At the same time, however, take care you do not, through being so pleased with them, accustom yourself to so overvalue them as to be distressed if ever you should lose them. Retire into yourself. The nature of the rational principle that rules us is to be content with itself when it does what is just, and so secures tranquillity. Subdue the imagination. Check the drives of impulse. Confine your care to the present. Understand well what happens to you and to others. Divide and distribute every object between its casual and its material elements. Think of your last hour. Let the harm done by another man stay where the harm was done. Pay attention to what is being said. Let your understanding keep pace with what is being done and the causes of it. Adorn yourself with simplicity and modesty, and with indifference towards the things which are neither good nor bad. Love mankind. Follow God. The poet says that law rules all. It is enough to remember that law rules all. As for death, whether it is a dispersion, or a dissolution into atoms, or annihilation, it is either extinction or change. As for pain, a pain that is intolerable carries us off, but that which lasts a long time is bearable. The mind maintains its own tranquillity by retiring into itself, and the ruling faculty is not injured. As for the parts which are hurt by the pain, let them, if they can, give their opinion of it. As for fame, look at the minds of those who seek fame. Observe what they are, and what kind of things they avoid, and what kind of things they pursue. And consider that as one heap of sand piled on another hides the sand of the first, so in life an earlier exploit is soon covered by those which come after. A saying of Plato: "A man with a lofty mind, who takes a view of all time and all substance, can he, do you suppose, regard human life as anything great? Not possibly. Such a man will think, too, that death is no evil. Certainly not." From Antisthenes: "It is a royal thing to do good and to be abused." To have a countenance obedient, regulated, and composed, as the mind commands, and a mind not regulated and composed by itself, is a base thing. It is not right to vex ourselves at things, for they care naught about us. To the immortal gods and us give joy. Life must be reaped like the ripe ears of corn. One man is born, another dies. If gods care not for me and for my children, there is a reason for it. For the good is with me, and the just. No joining with others in their wailing, no violent emotion. From Plato, but I would make this man a sufficient answer, which is this: you are wrong if you think a man who is good for anything at all should count over the hazards of life or death, and should not rather look to this only in all he does, whether what he is doing is just or unjust, and the work of a good or a bad man. For this, men of Athens, is the truth. Wherever a man has taken his stand, thinking it the best place for him, or has been stationed by his commander, there, in my opinion, he ought to stay and abide the hazard, reckoning nothing, either death or anything else, worse than the baseness of deserting his post. But, my good friend, consider whether nobility and goodness are not something different from saving and being saved. For we must not allow that they consist of living such or such a time, at least for one who is really a man, nor should he be fond of life, but entrusting it to God, believing what the women say, that no man can escape his destiny, and he should next inquire how best he may live the time he has to live. Follow the courses of the stars, as if you were going along with them, and consider constantly the changes of the elements into one another. For such thoughts purge away the filth of this earthly life. This is a fine saying of Plato, that he who discourses of men should look at earthly things as if he viewed them from some higher place, should look at them in their assemblies, armies, labors on the soil, their marriages, treaties, births and deaths, the noise of the courts of justice, the desert places, the various nations of barbarians, the feasts, lamentations, markets, the mixture of all things, and orderly combination of contraries. Consider the past, the great shifts in political supremacy. You may foresee also the things which will be, for they will certainly keep the same form. They cannot possibly deviate from the order in which they take place now. Accordingly, to have contemplated human life for 40 years is the same as to have contemplated it for 10,000 years. For what more will you see? What has grown from the earth goes back to the earth, but what has sprung from heavenly seed back to the heavenly realms returns. This means either a dissolution of intertwining atoms, or a similar dispersion of unfeeling elements. With food and drinks and cunning magic arts, turning the channel's course to escape from death, the breeze which heaven has sent we must endure, and toil without complaining. Another may be more expert in thwarting his opponent, but he is not more social, nor more modest, nor better disciplined to meet all that happens, nor more considerate to the faults of his neighbors. Where every act must be performed in accord with the reason which is common to gods and men, we have nothing to fear. When we can profit by activity which is successful and in harmony with our nature, we need suspect no harm. Everywhere and at all times it is in your power to accept reverently your present condition, to behave justly to those about you, and to exert your skill to control your thoughts, that nothing shall steal into them without being well examined. Look not around to discover other men's motives, but look straight to what nature leads you, both universal nature, through the things that befall you, and your own nature, through the acts you are compelled to do. Every being must do what its constitution requires, and all other things have been constituted to serve rational beings, just as among irrational things the inferior exists for the sake of the superior, and things with reason exist for the sake of one another. The primary principle, then, in man's constitution is the social. The second is not to yield to the temptations of the body, for it is the peculiar mark of the rational and intelligent agent to set its own bounds and never to be overpowered by the activity either of the senses or the appetites, for both are animal. But the intelligent agent claims superiority and does not permit itself to be overpowered by the others. With good reason, for it is formed by nature to make use of all the rest. The third mark of a rational constitution is freedom from error and deception. Let your mind hold fast to these things and go straight on, and it has what is its own. Consider yourself to be dead, and to have completed your life up to the present time. Then live out according to nature the remainder which is allowed you. Love only that which happens to you, and is woven with the thread of your destiny, for what is more suited to your needs? Whatever happens, keep before your eyes those who have borne the same things, how they were vexed and grieved and full of complaining. And now where are they? Nowhere. Then why do you choose to act in the same way? Why do you not leave these agitations, which are foreign to your nature, to those who cause them, or are moved by them? Why are you not wholly intent on making the right use of your misfortunes? For if you will use them well, they will be a material for you to work on. Only attend to yourself and resolve to be a good man in every act, remembering that that on which the act is based is in itself indifferent. Dig within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig. The body ought to be controlled, and to avoid contortion in motion or attitude. For what the mind shows in the face by maintaining the expression of intelligence and propriety, that ought to be required in the whole body also. But all these things should be observed without affectation. Life is more like wrestling than dancing, in that it should stand ready and firm to meet onsets, however unexpected. Always be sure whose approbation it is you wish to secure, and what ruling principles they have. Then you will neither blame those who offend involuntarily, nor will you want their approbation, if you look to the sources of their opinions and appetites. No soul, says the philosopher, voluntarily deprives itself of truth, or of justice, temperance, benevolence, or of any other good thing. It is most necessary to bear this constantly in mind, for thus you will be more gentle towards all. In every pain remind yourself that there is no dishonor in it, nor does it impair your governing intelligence. It does not damage it either in its rational or social aspects. Indeed, in the case of most pains, let this remark of Epicurus aid you, that pain is neither intolerable nor everlasting, if you bear in mind that it has its limits, and if you add nothing to it in imagination. And remember this, too, that we do not perceive that many things which are disagreeable to us are the same as pain, such as excessive drowsiness, and being feverish, and having no appetite. When you are discontented about any of these things, say to yourself that you are yielding to pain. Take care not to feel toward the inhuman, as human beings too often feel toward each other. How do we know that Talauges was not superior in character to Socrates? For it is not enough that Socrates died a more noble death, and disputed more skillfully with the sophists, and spent the night in the cold with more endurance, and that when he was bid to arrest Leon of Salamis, he considered it more noble to refuse, and that he walked in a swaggering way in the streets, though, as to this one fact, one doubts if it was true. But we ought to inquire what kind of a soul it was that Socrates possessed, and if he was able to be content with being just towards men, and reverent towards the gods, neither idly vexed on account of men's villainy, nor yet making himself a slave to any man's ignorance, nor receiving as strange anything that fell to his share, nor enduring it as intolerable, nor allowing his understanding to be affected by the ills of the miserable flesh. Nature has so mingled the intelligence with the composition of the body as to have allowed you the power of self-determination, and of bringing under subjection all that is your own. It is very possible to be godlike and to be recognized as such by no one. Always bear this in mind, and also that very little indeed is necessary for a happy life. And because you have despaired of becoming a dialectician, and skilled in the knowledge of nature, do not for this reason renounce the hope of being both free and modest, and social and obedient to God. It is in your power to live free from all compulsion, and in the greatest tranquillity of mind, even if all the world cry out against you as much as they choose, and even if wild beasts tear you limb from limb. For what hinders the mind, in the midst of all this, from being tranquil in truly judging all surrounding things, and readily using the material presented to it, so that the judgment may say to the thing which falls under its observation, "This you are in reality," though in the opinion of men you may appear to be of a different kind. And use may say to opportunity, "You are the thing I was seeking," for whatever presents itself is material for virtue, both rational and political, and, in a word, for the exercise of art, which belongs to man or God. Everything which happens has a relationship either to God or man, and is neither new nor difficult to handle, but familiar and fit matter to work on. The perfection of moral character consists in this, in passing every day as the last, and in being neither violently excited, nor torpid, nor hypocritical. The immortal gods are not vexed because they must tolerate men as they are, and so many of them bad. Still, they take care of them in all ways. But you, who are destined to end so soon, are you weary of enduring the bad, and this too, when you are one of them? It is a ridiculous thing for a man not to fly from his own wickedness, which is indeed possible, but to fly from other men's wickedness, which is impossible. Whatever the rational and social faculty finds to be neither reasonable nor social, it correctly judges to be inferior to itself. When you have done a good act, and another has received it, why do you still want something more, as fools do, either to have the credit for a good act or the recompense? No one tires of receiving what is useful, but it is useful to act according to nature. Do not then tire of receiving what is useful by doing what is useful to others. The nature of the all moved to make a world of order. Either everything that takes place follows by way of consequence, or the movements are governed by no rational principle. If you remember this, it will make you more tranquil in many things. 8. This may help to keep you from vainglory, that you cannot claim to have lived the whole of your life, or even from your youth upward, as a philosopher, but both to others and to yourself it is plain that you are far from philosophy. You have fallen into confusion, then, so that it is no longer easy for you to get the reputation of a philosopher. If, then, you have truly seen what the facts are, never mind what others think of you, and be content to live the rest of your life as nature wills. Observe, then, what it wills, and let nothing else distract you, for you have experienced many wanderings without having found happiness anywhere. Where is happiness, then? In doing what man's nature requires. How, then, shall a man do this? By having principles from which come his affections and his acts. What principles? Those which relate to good and bad, the belief that there is nothing good for man which does not make him just, temperate, manly, free, and that there is nothing bad which does not produce opposite results. Of every action ask yourself, what does this mean to me? Shall I repent it? A little time, and I am dead, and all is gone. What more do I seek, if what I am now doing is the work of an intelligent and social being, and one who is under the same law with God? Alexander and Caesar and Pompey, what are they in comparison with Diogenes and Heraclitus and Socrates? For the latter were acquainted with things, and their causes, and their matter, and the ruling principles of these men were the same. But as to the former, how much foresight did they have, and to how many things were they slaves? Remember that men will go on doing the same things even if you should burst in protest. This is the chief thing. Do not be perturbed, for all things are according to the law of nature. And in a little time you will be nobody and nowhere, like Hadrian and Augustus. In the next place, keep your eyes fixed steadily on your business, remembering it is your duty to be a good man, and do what a man's nature demands without turning aside, and speak as it seems to you most just. Only let it be with a good temper, and with modesty, and without hypocrisy. Nature has this work to do, to shift and to change, to remove from here, and to carry there. All things are change, yet we need not fear anything new. All things are familiar, and even the distribution of them also remains the same. Every nature is contented with itself when it goes on its way well, and a rational nature goes on its way well when in its thoughts it assents to nothing false or uncertain, when it directs its movements to social acts only, when it confines its desires and aversions to the things which are in its power, and when it is satisfied with everything that is assigned to it by the common nature. For of this common nature every particular nature is a part, as the nature of the leaf is a part of the nature of the plant, except that in the plant the nature of the leaf is part of a nature which has not perception or reason, and is subject to impediments. But the nature of man is part of a nature which is not subject to impediment, and is intelligent and just, since it gives to everything in equal portions, and according to its worth, times, substance, cause, activity, and incident. Only do not look for exact equality between individual and individual, but take all the parts of one thing together, and compare them with all parts taken together of another. You have no time or opportunity to read and to know everything, but you do have time and opportunity to check arrogance, to be superior to pleasure and pain, and love of fame, and not to be vexed at stupid and ungrateful people, and even to care for them. Let no man hear you finding fault with court life or with your own. Repentance is a kind of self-reproof for having neglected something useful, for that which is good must be something useful, and the good man's object in life. But no good man would ever repent of having refused any sensual pleasure. Pleasure, therefore, is neither good nor useful. Of each particular thing ask, what is it in itself, in its own constitution?